Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today. This is a part of the Grow Solar Chicagoland program, which is a partnership between a bunch of different entities, as Carl had explained. But I'm Cynthia Segura, and I'm with Citizens Utility Board, or CUB, and we have partnered with the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, or the MREA, who my colleague here, Taylor, is from. And basically, this is a campaign to educate folks about going solar in general. And then also we're connecting folks who want to go solar with a vetted installer across Chicagoland counties. And we'll get into this further along in the presentation, but now is a really great time to go solar considering state and federal incentives. So if you end up going solar as a part of this program or on your own, either way, it's best to speak to an installer when you have a better foundational understanding of how this all works. So we're really hoping that folks leave here today feeling more informed. All right, so before getting into it, I will do a bit of an introduction to our organizations. So the MREA is an educational organization that promotes renewable energy through different kinds of courses. They have different courses in solar PV, solar thermal, and wind as well. The MREA was founded in 1990, and they've been running group buy programs like this since 2013 all throughout the Midwest. And the MREA's philosophy is that the more solar, the better, and that education is always a great first step. So educational outreach is always effective when tied to programs like this. So whether you go solar on your own or this year or in 5 years, either way, we hope that you gain a better understanding of the technology through this program. And then I'm a part of Citizens Utility Board, or I work at CUB, and we represent utility ratepayers across the state. So this means when an investor-owned utility or state-regulated utility wants to raise rates or spend ratepayer money, we fight for consumers in that regulatory setting. But we also do a lot of consumer education on outreach on things like energy efficiency, on solar, on reading your bill and navigating your options that way. And we are also a part of the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition, which is a coalition of organizations that advocated for the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, which has really greatly expanded our state's renewable energy incentive programs, workforce development programs, and has set Illinois on path to achieve 50% renewable generation in the state by 2040, among a ton of other great things. But beyond that, we also host a lot of educational events for folks. So I really recommend folks check out our website and attend a CUB event in the near future. But we are lucky enough today to be co-hosted by Nest. So if you've heard about our presentation or Grow Solar or organizations through them, thank you so much for tuning in today and welcome. All right, so before diving in, we're going to look at the agenda here. So first I'll talk about the benefits of going solar, and then I'll hand it over to our installer, Windfree Solar, Adam at Windfree Solar, who is our selected installer for the program, and he will go over the basics of solar for us. And then I'll explain the various types of ways you can go solar through financing, so leases versus owning. We'll talk about community solar and Illinois Solar for All. And then we will talk about the specifics of the Chicagoland Group Buy program. All right, so let's first talk about why now is a great time to go solar. So solar is booming in the state and across the nation. It's gotten a lot cheaper to implement solar since solar cells first came online for commercial use around 1956. And as we know, the technology itself is not new, but scientists have been improving and advancing the technology for quite a while now. So much so that it's becoming cost competitive with other incumbent sources of energy, and we hope to see that trend continue in the coming years. So there currently, or as of 2021, there are 121.4 gigawatts of solar in the US, which is equivalent to powering 23.3 million American homes. And in America, or in the US, solar accounted for 46% of new electric generating capacity additions for the year 2021. Now, this is more than any other energy source, and it means that more solar capacity was added than coal capacity in 2021. And then at that bottom bullet there, you can see that Zillow actually performed a study and found that homes that have solar panels sell for 4.1% more than similar non-solar homes. So all of these points really just point to the fact that going solar pays for itself. And then later on in the presentation, we'll talk about how incentives help pay for the installation costs as well. All right, so widespread solar adoption could significantly reduce nitrous oxides, sulfur dioxide, and particulate matter, all of which can cause health problems and air pollution. By going solar, you can reduce demand for fossil fuels, you can limit greenhouse gas emissions, and you can even shrink your own carbon footprint. So it's really important to note that one home installing a solar energy system can have measurable impacts on the environment. And this tool here was using the EPA equivalent greenhouse gases equivalency calculator there. All right, so now we'll talk about Solar 101 and the basics of solar. So this is a solar irradiance map. So this means that areas in red are receiving more sunlight than areas in green or in purple. And believe it or not, there are places who receive actually less sunlight than the Chicagoland area and are still successfully adopting solar in a meaningful way. So meaning that if you're sitting there thinking, oh, we don't get enough sunlight in the wintertime or year round, that's not really the issue. So let's look at this map here. If you could see at the bottom right corner, this is Germany in this purple in the corner right here. Germany has the highest amount of solar capacity installed per capita in the world. And they also have this goal to generate 50% of their power with solar by 2030. So as you can see, Germany is in purple, so it's receiving a lot less sunlight than other areas in the United States. But there are policies like feed-in tariffs and net metering, which make this possible. But now I'm going to hand it over to Adam, if he is here from Windfree, and he will talk about how solar panels work. But I will kind of give it a minute to see if Adam is here. I didn't see him before.
Yeah,
oh, awesome. Sorry.
Hi, Cynthia.
Hello.
I don't know why my name says Taylor Ball here, but I'm Adam from Windfree Solar. And we're going to go a little bit about how solar works. We will talk about, so as you can see in number 1, the sun is shining on the solar panels. The energy from the photons excites the electrons in the panels, which creates what's called DC energy. This DC energy is not usable by the home in this form, so it goes to number 3, the inverter, where it is changed into AC energy. Now, the AC energy is usable by the home, so it is used by the home. Anything in excess flows to the meter, number 4, where it is tracked, accounted for, and then sent back to the grid for energy credits. So on the screen, you will see a system dashboard. If you were to go solar at your house, you would receive something very similar. You'd be able to track production and be able to run diagnostics from your home or tablet. You can see it's very easy to tell if there's any panels that are not performing properly. In the bottom right-hand corner, there is a panel that's not working. So it is quite obvious when there is service that's required. On this next screen, we're going to go talk a little bit about the different inverters that are used. Up first is the traditional string inverter, something like an SMA inverter, no longer really used for residential purposes and actually more useful in commercial projects where there is not a lot of shading and there's large arrays that need to be strung together. What we would use for residential purposes, yeah, you're good.
Oh, sorry.
You're good. Would be something more like an N-phase microinverter or Solar Edge, which is a string inverter with power optimizers, both of which help to mitigate shading impacts from trees, or maybe there's a chimney in the area. Also, when on smaller projects, you're always going to want to use something like N-phase because they help to boost production. So if you're curious if your home is a good candidate for solar, you can feel free to use something like Google Project Sunroof. The link's on the screen. You'll get a very similar image to what's on the slide right now. What we are specifically looking for is south-facing homes or south-facing roof exposure. East and west is also good, but north is not. We're also looking obviously for a home without a lot of shading, a lot of obstructions on the roof. And yeah, if you're interested, you can feel free to use Project Sunroof or reach out to us and we can get you a more detailed report. So the way that we install, we do mount the panels directly parallel to the roof pitch. We use an aluminum-based racking system, so there's no issues with any sort of exposure or rusting. All of the racking is flashed directly into the roof, into the joists themselves. And of course, considering the fact that we are in the Midwest and we get some pretty extreme weather, all of these systems are snow and hail rated. And then finally, to note that these systems are attached to the grid. So if there's any outages in the area or the grid goes down, your home would also be offline. And the reason is it's an intentional, by design, it's called rapid shutdown, and it's designed specifically to protect linesmen that may be working in the area. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Adam. All right, carrying on, to give you all an idea of what a solar array looks like, the average size of a solar array in Illinois is a 6.5 kilowatt system. And to better understand that, we'll break it down into terminology here so that you can understand what a kilowatt hour and what a kilowatt is and what the difference between those two are. So kilowatts measure the power capacity. So this means that a kilowatt is a measurement of the most energy your system can produce at one instance. So for example, a 5 kilowatt system means 5 kilowatts per instant. It's also a way to describe the rating or the size of the system. So, and then we also have a kilowatt hour. So this is different from a kilowatt because a kilowatt hour is the power that's used over time. So kilowatt hours are what shows up on your electric bill. So it's really important to note the difference there. But in this example, this is a 6.5 kilowatt system, and this system is expected to produce 9,000 kilowatt hours in the first year. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about net metering. So I'll mostly be talking in the context for ComEd folks. So for those recording or listening to the recording or on this meeting that are not ComEd folks, this might be a little bit different. But net metering, the concept of net metering means that any excess electricity that's produced by your solar system is actually sent back to the electric grid, and it's subtracted from the electricity that you're importing from the grid, which works to reduce your overall electric costs. So this can work to reduce the payback period of your system. So basically net metering is when your solar array is producing more energy than is being immediately consumed, and you're able to actually receive a credit for that excess electricity that's sent back to the utility. So what happens is that they'll apply this credit to the electricity that you use throughout the month, and this credit will help to reduce your bill. It will not work to completely zero out your bill, which we'll see in the next coming slides. For ComEd customers, that means that ComEd credits you at the same rate that you're purchasing electricity from them and then credits are rolling over from month to month. And then once a year, there is an annual true-up period in April. So you can see this graph here that it actually shows what you would use and produce over the course of a day. So if you're producing more energy than you're using, you would accrue a credit at the end of the month on your electric bill. And generally, you want the total area of that yellow curve to be equivalent to the area of the blue curve here. Net metering basically applies when that yellow area is greater than the blue area. But if you're a net producer, meaning that more yellow than blue, then you receive a credit on your electric bill. Even if you're a net consumer, then your electric bill will still be lower because you're not being charged for the electricity that you are producing and using yourself. And the concept of net metering is not ComEd specific. It's across the board when it comes to electric utilities. Okay, so this chart shows annual energy usage versus the projected solar usage for 1 year for an average home. So some months your solar array is going to generate more than what you're using, and then other months you'll be using the grid plus your solar array for energy consumption. So yellow is anticipated solar for the area, and then that blue there is the typical energy usage for 1 year. But for you, the homeowner, it's pretty transparent that net metering works to save folks money over the course of the year as you are building up credits for the excess electricity and production that rolls over for future months. And you can see in this example here that this home solar array produced 73% of the yearly energy consumption of that specific household. And like mentioned in the previous slide, you want your usage to equal your production, or at least as close as possible. All right, so I'm going to go through an example for a ComEd bill, since this is standard in our presentations. I'm sorry, I know a lot of folks are not ComEd customers in this presentation here, but this is the back of a ComEd bill, and you can see at the top there, there is meter information, and there will be two readings, one for the kilowatt hours sent to the grid, and one for kilowatt hours that you're using from the grid. So for this example here, this consumer is using 420 kilowatt hours from the grid, and they're exporting 600 kilowatt hours to the grid, meaning that they're a net exporter of energy. And you can see in their bill here that although they're a net exporter, their bill is not completely zeroed out. So what happens here is that the customer has rollover credits from this month, and those rollover credits are showing up in this miscellaneous column here to the right. And then what happens is that those credits are then applied to the month's bill, showing up under the three different sections of the bill: supply, delivery, and then taxes and fees. And although this month is a month where that customer exported more energy than they actually used from the grid, their bill is still $15, and that's because net metering does not offset the $10 customer charge and then the $5 standard metering charge on their bill. So $15 is about as low as your ComEd bill would get if you do have net metering and solar. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about energy efficiency, and this is quite cheesy, and if you've sat in on a CUB presentation, you've probably heard this before, but the cheapest kilowatt hour or therm is the one that you don't use in the first place. So as catchy and cheesy as it is, it's very, very true. And understanding your own personal energy usage is an important first step to going green and towards energy independence. So making energy efficiency and conservation choices in your home, it can look like replacing old appliances with efficient electric alternatives. It can look like switching out old incandescent light bulbs with LED light bulbs, utilizing power stripping, or powering off electronics when they're not in use. And all of those can really add up and save you a significant amount of energy and money as well. So at the household level, efficiency measures have been shown to provide 3 times the financial value as investments in solar energy. So that means that energy efficiency is a really, really great first step before going solar, and regardless if you do go solar or not. Implementing good energy efficiency measures is an upfront economic investment that can really reduce your energy needs, and thus reducing the size and cost of your PV system for your home or your business. And I will say, and this goes without saying, you don't have to make energy efficiency improvements in order to pursue solar. However, if you do, it's really important that, or if you do plan on making larger energy efficiency investments, it's a good idea to talk to your installer about that. And I'm talking about things like if you're planning on electrifying your space heating or installing an electric vehicle, those are good conversations to have with your installer before pursuing solar, or and if you're thinking about those investments. So just wanted to point that out there. All right, so now we're wrapping up the Solar 101 section here. And on this slide, you can see a bunch of the different considerations to keep in mind before speaking with an installer. So does your roof have good solar exposure? Which direction is your roof facing? Do you anticipate re-roofing? Is your home energy efficient? And Adam covered a bunch of these as well, but when an installer performs the site assessment, they'll take these things into consideration to determine the size cost, or the system cost, the size, the design, but these are all good things to keep in mind as well. And so for most people, roof mounted systems are the ideal array mount, and you'll want your roof to face as close due south as possible and to be as free as possible from any other obstructions, so power lines, trees, other buildings, shading issue wise. And then I also do want to mention that east or west facing roofs are also workable options, though power generation is typically a little bit lower than solar facing roofs. So, and a lower sloped roof is better for east-west roofs. So just want to mention that their east-west roofs are workable options and south is ideal. And then as Adam mentioned earlier, you can go to Google Project Sunroof or contact Windfree Solar to get a better understanding of the property's potential and solar exposure there. All right, so now we'll talk about the incentives available for going solar. There's a lot happening in the state right now. I know I talked a little bit earlier about the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, but we have other incentives on the federal level as well. So we'll walk through these one by one. But the current incentives can cover up to 60% of the cost for going solar if you purchase the system outright, which I'll explain what that means in a future slide. So the first incentive here is from the state of Illinois, and it's called the SREC, the State Solar Renewable Energy Credit. Now this can cover up to 30% of the cost for going solar. And like I said, that's actually a credit from the state. And the second incentive on this slide here is the federal tax credit, and it's equivalent to 26% of the costs for going solar. And so you'll get these two incentives within the first year of going solar, and then utility net metering, as I've explained in a past slide, those credits help you pay back your system faster. And then I do also want to add here that another benefit that we have in Illinois is that homeowners associations cannot outright block you from going solar or fine you from going solar. So I just wanted to highlight that there. All right, so the first credit is the SREC, the State Solar Renewable Energy Credit. So this is a credit that is received from the state of Illinois through a program called Illinois Shines. So what happens is, like mentioned earlier, Illinois has really ambitious goals, really ambitious climate commitments and renewable energy goals. Illinois has a goal to hit 50% renewable energy generation by 2040. So this means that if you're going solar on your own property and you participate in the Illinois Shines program, the state is going to want to be able to count that solar generation toward their overall goal. But in order to do so, they have to purchase what are called renewable energy credits, which is basically kind of like an accounting mechanism for the benefits associated with generating renewables. So the state can't legally claim that generation unless they pay you for it through that program. So the way that this program works is that your solar installer will figure out how much renewable energy your system is expected to produce over a 15-year period. And then once they have that number, they'll multiply that by a dollar amount per unit of solar energy, and that will determine how much you actually receive from that incentive from that program. So I can't tell you it's a specific amount. It's dependent on how much energy your system will produce over a 15-year period. So what happens is that this credit is processed by the solar installer, and typically they'll take a bit of a cut of that incentive as a processing fee, which tends to be around 10%. And then afterwards, you'll typically receive this incentive as a check from your solar installer around 6 to 12 months after your system is installed and connected to the grid. And then also just wanted to note here that the solar renewable energy credit is considered taxable income. All right, so moving on to the second incentive here, this is from the federal level. So this is a federal tax credit, and this credit is equivalent to 26% of the total project costs. And that includes labor costs, system installation, and interconnection wiring. And this does not include a new roof unless your home is one of the few situations that require structural reinforcements to support solar on that home. I'll also note that the home must be owned by the taxpayer, but does not have to serve as the principal residence. This is also a non-refundable credit, but what happens is that it will reduce what you owe on your income taxes. So if the value of the credit is greater than what you owe in income taxes that year, then that excess amount can actually be rolled over to the next year. And then I do need to note here that this credit is not here to stay. Unfortunately, this is a credit that it's on its way out. It's designed to sunset by the end of 2023. So this credit was previously at 30% for a long time, or 30% of the project cost for a long time. But this year it did step down to 26%. And next year, it will step down to 22% of the project costs. And then starting 2024, this credit is designed to sunset for the residential sector. So this means that if you're considering going solar, there is advantage, financial advantage to actually doing so sooner this year than next year if you're contemplating. So just wanted to highlight that there. And these are the numbers where legislation currently stands. All right, so now we'll discuss the different options for going solar and financing. So for most of the presentation here, we've been speaking about outright owning the system. But if you want to install solar on your own, there are 3 different options here. So the first one is to purchase the panels outright. So this is what I've been talking about, where you're directly able to take advantage of the state and the federal incentives available. There's also lots of different financing options available to helping you purchase your system. So different types of loans, et cetera. And then the second option here is to lease. So with the solar lease, what happens is that you do not own the system outright, but instead the solar installer owns the system. And because the solar installer owns the system, that means that they get to directly take advantage of the incentives. So the state and the federal incentives, that means that the owner of that system would then directly take advantage of those. So the idea there is that they would use those incentives to then lower the monthly payment for the consumer, but there is no actual requirement that they pass a certain percentage of those savings onto the consumer. So although there is it's very often that there is no money up front owed within a lease, it's very often that you can end up paying significantly more over the lifetime of the lease than you would if you had purchased the system outright and had been able to directly taken advantage of those incentives. So that's why I just want to highlight there that if you're considering leasing or a power purchase agreement, which I will explain, it's always a good idea to first consider purchasing the system outright and getting a quote for that. But the third option there is the power purchase agreement or a PPA. This is similar to a lease, but the company owns the system, or in the sense that the company owns the system, but instead of a monthly fixed payment, you would then pay a rate per kilowatt hour for the energy that's being produced by the system. So you'd probably pay more in the spring and the summer when your system is producing more energy than you would in the winter. But I just wanted to highlight a few things to look out for with leases and PPAs. Many of those contracts include what's called a cost escalator. So this is a line in the contract saying that your monthly payment will increase annually, usually by 1 to 3%. So this might seem low because that sounds like a low number, but these are long-term contracts. But so it's really important to keep in mind that by the end of the contract, you could be paying significantly more a month than you were that first year after signing that contract. So like I mentioned earlier, it's always best to check the contract and see it's always best to consider purchasing the system outright when you're also looking at leasing or PPAs. I also wanted to highlight that it's a good idea to also check what happens if you move. A lot of these contracts could have unfavorable things for the homeowner if you do need to sell the house before the lease term is up or the PPA term is up. But even if you don't plan on moving, it's just a good idea to understand what happens in case things change down the road. But like I had mentioned earlier on, CUB and the MREA recommends never signing a lease or a power purchase agreement without first exploring ownership options, since most people will pay significantly less purchasing a system than leasing or with the power purchase agreement. All right, so the next program I'll talk about is called Community Solar. Now, this is a program that's available in the state somewhat recently, as of a few years ago. But this is a great program for those who can't get solar on their own property for whatever reason. It's also a great program for renters or people that have inadequate shading on their roofs or whatever prevents them from actually installing solar on their own property. So what happens with community solar is that when you sign up with a company, they will look at your electricity usage to determine your subscription size. And you can kind of think of this as how many solar panels you're subscribed to out of a huge, a larger solar garden. So what happens is that each month your subscription will generate solar energy, and that will be credited for on your electric bill. And then you would have to pay 2 bills. So I don't want to confuse folks about this, but what happens is that you would remain receiving your current electric bill, which would have credits for the solar that is being produced by your subscription. But then you would also have a monthly community solar bill. And even though you are paying 2 bills, you would be saving money overall, meaning that net-wise, you are guaranteed to save amongst all of the different offers in Illinois currently. They all have a percentage of savings guarantee. And that's because these projects are incentivized by the state. So community solar companies are able to sell you that at a lower rate. And then if you're curious as to more details on community solar, CUB does have a solar in the community website. It's on our website. If you go under the resources tab, it has a ton of great information on community solar. And then the final state program I want to talk about is called Illinois Solar for All. Now, this is a state-run program that is available to low-income communities and environmental justice communities. So it includes incentives for community solar, rooftop residential solar, and then also for solar for nonprofits or public facilities that service low-income or environmental justice communities. So what happens is if you qualify for Illinois Solar for All, it's going to actually be the most affordable way to go solar. And it's actually structured in a way where in most cases, a lease is going to be the best bet, which is kind of ironic because the last slide I was just explaining to practice caution when shopping with leases. But Illinois Solar for All is a different case. There are strong consumer protections associated with the program. So that means that 50% of the savings on that there is a guaranteed savings, and that 50% of the savings on the energy generated by the solar system, meaning that participants in the program are guaranteed to save money. And like mentioned, this is probably one of the only cases where a lease is going to be your best bet off the bat there. But this is a different structure to going solar. So, and I will also mention that the income qualification is at or below 80% of the area median income. So this is dependent on household size and region. And then you can always visit the IllinoisSFA.com website to learn more. All right, so now we'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of the Grow Solar Chicagoland Group 5 program. So like mentioned earlier, the MREA started these Group 5 programs back in 2013 in Milwaukee. And as you can see on this picture on the right, they've facilitated tons of Group 5 programs throughout the five Midwestern states to date, which has resulted in over 2,300 properties going solar to generate almost 17.5 megawatts of renewable solar energy. So there are different components of a solar Group 5 program and how that works. So first, we have solar power hours that are being hosted throughout the Chicagoland area for a few months. And these sessions are open to the public, and they work to educate the public about solar benefits and incentives. So like mentioned, anyone can come to these solar power hours. So those who are just interested in going solar, those who want to go solar on their own, our objective here is really to educate the public. And then simultaneously, we run we run a request for proposals process to find a quality installer. So we're looking at all these different factors. We're looking at certification. We're looking at, do they have a licensed electrician on staff? We're looking at, experience in installing residential solar, et cetera. We're looking at a holistic we're taking a holistic approach at looking at all of the proposals there. And that's how we are able to connect folks with a vetted installer. We're looking at quality. And then the third part there is that once the selection is completed, interested solar power hour participants can then sign up for this consultation to receive a custom estimate for them to go solar. And then the fourth option, or the fourth part there, is that the more people who sign up, the more participants can save. So we'll talk about this in the next slides about the structure of the rebate there. But if you know anybody who is interested in going solar, please do point them to the Grow Solar Chicagoland website and to the Power Hour schedule to learn more about going solar through the program as well. All right, so now I'm going to hand it back over to Adam from Windfree Solar, who is our vetted installer for the program.
Thank you, Cynthia. So Windfree Solar has been around for over 12 years now. We are a Chicago-based company working specifically in the Chicagoland and Northern Illinois area. Over our time, oh wow, this jumped way back. We've completed over 900 installations in the Chicagoland area with about 19 megawatts of solar. This is specifically residential projects. We also work in the commercial sector. We also work in the electric vehicle charging stations, which is a very hot topic now with the new incentives that are available. We also handle sustainability and energy consultations and LED retrofits. And finally, some of our most notable projects include DePaul University, Habitat for Humanity, where we did the very first solar installation in Illinois, and the Oak Park Conservatory. And then what we provide for the Group Buy program, we handle all of the permitting and engineering, labor, materials, incentive applications and processing. State incentive specifically is pretty complicated, but we do handle all of that on your behalf. We also provide all of the warranty documentation, which includes 25-year power warranty on the panels, 12 years on the inverter, 25 years on power optimizers and microinverters, and then a 15-year workmanship warranty. Also, one of the very first things that we do ask for, if you do consider going solar at your house, is a recent copy of a utility bill. And we ask for this specifically so that we can properly size and design the system for your needs. And then finally, all of the materials that we use are the latest and greatest on the market. Thank you.
All righty, thank you, Adam. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about the pricing structure through the Group Buy program. So the base price for the program is at $3.20 per watt that with Windfree Solar, sorry. And this offer is lower than what they would offer outside of the program. And then in addition to this base price, there are a series of different rebates that kick in as we hit different benchmarks throughout the program. So the highest goal here is at 750 kilowatts, which is around 115 homes. 115 homes, sorry. And then for context here, our 2019 program, we installed 976 kilowatts on about 124 homes. So when you're factoring in the SREC payment and the federal tax credit on top of this Group Buy a discounted rate, and then the added benchmark rebates, you can see that those savings and those incentives do add up. And here is an example of what a cost estimate could be through the program. So you can see this base rate at $3.20 per watt. You can see that the Illinois State Renewable Energy Credit is taken here, as well as the federal incentive or federal investment tax credit with the additional Group Buy discount. So you can see that all of those really do add up to reduce the cost of going solar. And this is all using the 6.5 kilowatt average residential solar array system sized system in the state. All right, so putting this all together, going forward, if you would like to, or if you're interested, you would fill out a form that we actually send out and, to receive a free solar quote. And then with that, you're gonna wanna be ready to share an electric bill that shows the past 12 months of usage, like Adam said, so that they can look at your average history usage. And then during that process, you're going to want to think of ways to become more energy efficient, which I personally think folks should be thinking about regardless of going solar. And then lastly here, you're going to want to tell your friends to attend a solar power hour, and that we'll have different solar power hours for the next, I want to say until the end of September. So we do have quite some time still. Also just wanted to plug our website, citizensutilityboard.org. If you're in need of any sort of resources on energy efficiency or energy conservation tips. We also run a hotline, which you can see on the slide here, as well as on our website, if you ever have any questions regarding utilities. And then also wanted to highlight that these programs are not possible without the help from MREA, and they are a membership organization. So if you are interested in becoming a member, I would highly recommend you check out their website. And this is actually our last slide here. We have contact information about the program, but we can do a Q&A.